Hey everyone, I am excited to share with you a recent interview that I did on the Art and Life podcast. I was the guest host for the season finale with Taylor Gallegos, a good friend, and just he's a prolific creator. He is a muralist and an artist in so many ways, and this is one of the best conversations I've had in a long time. And you can find the full uncut episode on his podcast, the Art and Life podcast. But I wanted to share the audio with you here on YouTube in the hopes that it inspires you to create. And yeah, I think in this episode, we talk a lot about the creative process, but in the second half, we get into the state of the world and the place for creativity. And yeah, it was just a beautiful, beautiful conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, sit back, relax, and listen to the Art and Life podcast, episode 100 with Taylor Gallegos. Cheers. So I really appreciate that. This is a show where you're not just talking about art. It's not just about the process or the end product. It's really about the act itself and how that infuses into our lives. I'm curious, when was the moment that you were inspired to start the podcast and maybe even choose that title?
Man, good question. Um, well, it was in 2020. Well, I was inspired by The School of Greatness. That's a podcast by Lewis Howes, and I actually, so I had side jobs throughout my artistic career. I got a degree in art, but I needed side jobs to help pay the bills all the way along. And I went all in with trying to make it as an artist, three separate times before the last time that I actually did it, where it's like worked completely, as of now. And like the last side job I had was a job doing construction. And that was a great job. And one of the biggest like perks was that I was allowed to have an earbud in my ear. And so like for 40 hours a week, I was just digesting podcasts and books and audiobooks. And I was just like absorbed, like I was listening to like self-help stuff, like create like business design, business, like so much shit about business, how to make things work as a small business entrepreneur, inspirational stuff like that. And it was super helpful. Like, I'm like pounding nails and doing demo in these hospital rooms, and all the while I'm just like learning. I felt like it was like time when I got to like that was like my graduate program. And Lewis Howes's podcast was like a major influence. And you can see it if you listen to one of those, The School of Greatness, you'll hear that part one of this podcast is like that, but adjusted and shifted to art and creativity, and then done with like my little twist. And then yeah, so like that was that. And in listening to it all the time, I was like, man, I think I could do this. I think that, like the conversations that I have around me with people all the time, these like amazing minds and creative forces that are the people that I get to interact with, like we could put together a badass podcast that would be inspirational. And I was looking around for art podcasts and anything to do with art, and I found some, but a lot of them felt dry to me and kind of like one dimensional, like people talking, like art people talking to art people about their process, and it was like too much in the weeds. Whereas, and like Lewis Howes interviews people from all different genres on the topic of greatness, because you can be great in anything. And so like in that same framework, I was like, oh, creativity and art would work in the same way.
Yeah, and I love how you've selected guests that aren't like classically artists a lot of the times. And it shows how there is artfulness in all kinds of professions. And sometimes the really amazing insights and advice can come from people that might not be in the same field that you're focused on. And it might be the unblocker or yeah. So I really appreciate that kind of how you live your life is to surround yourself with different types of people and just absorbing this information. And it's cool because I think for a lot of people, you are an example of someone who relentlessly pursues these really cool endeavors. And you're so prolific with your creativity, whether you're putting art on walls or you're somehow finding time to make all these podcasts. So it's also refreshing that you're yeah, in these conversations, just exploring that process and the insecurities and the shortcomings and that whole side of things as well. It's cool to hear that you tried to be a professional artist multiple times before it really stuck. And I guess, at this point, now that you are rather successful with your art career as it is, and the podcast, 100 episodes, can you point to some specific mindsets or things that were unblockers for you that maybe made it all gel and take you to that place where you're making the things that you want to make?
Yeah. Yeah. Another great question, Ryan. Well done. Um, I feel like like a major thing that needed to happen was I needed to find like a source of income, like a flow that worked. And like the murals has really done that for me. And as an artist, as a muralist, as a painter, there's so many different avenues that you can go. I know artists that are making it in like in all different little fields. Like there's just like, yeah, there's galleries, there's street fairs, there's art fairs, there's online stuff, there's so many different ways to make it. And as an artist, you just have to find your lane and your niche that works. And I've always had, in terms of painting and drawing, I've had a pretty diverse skill set, and that now as a muralist is a major strength. But before, it was actually sort of a setback because like I wasn't making like one coherent body of work that would sit in a gallery. I was all across the board, and I was like making custom paintings for people, and that was great, but I never ended up building like a portfolio that any one gallery could really like latch onto. Um, so so yeah, like finding the way to do that. And I have to give just a huge amount of credit to my dear friend Anna Parker, because she took me under her wing as a muralist, um, and I worked for her for like at least a year, maybe 2 years as her assistant. And she taught me what, not only like the technical skills of making murals specifically, but also like interaction with clients and as a muralist, and like all these different things, and really just like showed me, she taught me how to fish, like. And so that was just a major help. And then she moved to Georgia, and at that point, that was when I stepped in on my own.
Was it a really natural transition to murals, or did you have any reluctance because you were thinking of your art in a certain way and now you were having to, I don't know, focus? Was that hard?
No, actually it was like it was like so natural.
Mhm.
Like fish to water. I've always loved painting big, and so canvases, I would always be working on like 4 foot by 3 foot canvases, and like feeling like I could use more room. And when I was in Colorado, I did some murals. But I didn't really see that it was, I didn't see how much was there. I like scratched the surface and was like, this is cool. But I did mural projects for some companies that weren't really, they were good. I think what the problem was I didn't know how to get more and more business out of that. And I wasn't thinking like a business person. And that was part of what working with Anna really showed me, was the the flow of business, how to get more clients, how to market yourself, how to, like where the stream of projects was coming from.
Hmm. Yeah, you said to me once recently, which is still in my mind. I'm actually, as I glance over, I see this like huge canvas, which is probably like 5 times bigger than anything I've ever painted on.
Yeah.
And you said, expand your canvas and your art will expand. And that was pretty cool. And it's been cool to see your art expand as well, because I've seen a lot of your smaller things. And it's funny because when I think about your art, I also remember that back in the day, you would just paint on like whatever material you could find.
Yes.
So, plywood or I mean clothing, just like everything had paint on it.
Shit that
And
was just sitting in an alleyway. I just
yeah, I commissioned you to paint Eddie Vedder for my friend once.
right.
And you painted it on the rear windshield of a car, like the
Yeah.
back windshield of a car. It
Yeah.
was so, yeah, I think it's a natural evolution that you'd go from windshields to the big walls of corporate offices. So,
Totally.
with you said that you're most interested in the podcast currently, which I could see this being the 100th
I guess that's
episode.
one thing. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So it's fun to hear you talk though, because I think you have a lot of proficiency in the actual craft of painting itself, and now you're also learning a lot about business. And what you're talking about is a lot of basic business principles and niching down. So how have those two interplayed for you? Just the art side and the business side. Was there conflict initially? How do those two go together?
Oh my God, yes, there was conflict initially. And it's kind of ironic because when I went to college at CSU, that first semester I had a double major, and one was in art and one was in business. And I just
Split
thought
personality.
I know, and I thought the business classes were super dry, and I was like, this isn't what I want to do. And looking back, I really kind of wish that I would have done it, because then it would have helped from the beginning. I've had to um just like expand my understanding of the business world. There were a lot of like barriers in my mind that were sort of there, like um and like sort of thing, like paradigms that are placed, or expectations that are placed on you as an artist, of like so many people, just everyone just tells you like, oh, artists don't know business. And so then if you listen to that and you absorb it, then you believe it. And now that I've like put my focus towards like making this work as like, I'm a small business. As an artist, you are a small business. An independent artist, you're a small business. So um I've had to learn that. And along the way, I've learned what I don't need to focus on, what I can hire for. I've got a kick-ass team. There's Amy Alcorn, who's my business manager, who's been with me for over a year now, and she's a fucking ace. Like, I've been watching the World Cup a bunch right now, and I just feel like I just had the realization today that like Amy is like hiring, or like bringing on like a striker who's just like waiting to get the ball and turn and shoot goals. Like, she's helping move the ball forward in all these different ways, on like finding new clients, tightening things up. Like, the new website looks great. She did all of it. Um she has taken my whole situation with like taxes and bookkeeping and just like whipped it into shape.
Hmm.
And like, I always used to hate taxes and used to get like hit with these like random tax payments because I wasn't on my shit. And now it's like we're ahead of the ball and everything's done quarterly and we're just so dialed in. And then Delia is our executive assistant, and she does all the minutia of the bookkeeping. She does all the invoicing. She's reaching out to clients and doing this stuff, and any sort of little tasks um, she is handling. So, and we have a weekly meeting that we go into, which we're gonna have to take a break from this podcast for. Um, but like, we connect every week and see like who's got what to do and what's gonna happen, and we're communicating on Slack and Asana all the time. And we've turned this whole thing into like a really fine-tuned business. And Laura Austin, who was my business manager before Amy, she really helped me get from like ground zero to get the ball rolling. And then she wanted to go and do her own thing and become a doula. Um, and so, gave that blessing. She's killing it now. And but like before her, I felt like my wheels were spinning and I didn't know what to do. Like, like as hard as I'm like, I don't know what to do, what to make, how to make this whole thing work, how to make it as an artist. I couldn't put it all together. I knew how to paint. There was that. And I even was like getting those mural jobs, but still it like wasn't quite enough to make the whole equation work. And like I felt like, I would like put a lot of energy into one direction, but then nothing would happen. And so I was like, it just felt like I was in a boat with one oar. And with Laura, she gave me the other oar and started moving, and then switched out to Amy, and we put a fucking jetpack on the back of the boat.
That's cool, man. I
Now
love
here we
it.
are.
Yeah, it's really cool because I've been seeing a lot of your work on Instagram, and it's amazing the quality that you're producing and the scale and the different clients. And it's also really, I think, I don't know, it makes me feel good to know that there's a team doing that, like you're creating that creativity, but it's also Amy and the others that are enabling that to appear in the world. So I think that's probably true of a lot of art where you see the finished piece and you credit the artist. And I bet a lot of times there's a whole bunch of humans that allowed that beautiful thing to come into existence. And it's fun to hear you talk because when you were out here over I think it was in the spring, and you gave me a lot of really good advice that helped unblock me and just get painting, get creating. But I feel as I listen to you, like I just recognize that I'm several steps back. And when you listen to podcasts or you read books, there's this effect where you often are taking advice from someone who's like one or two steps ahead. And so it's hard to see how that applies. But I want to ask, like, if you look back at where you were there things that you could have, should have done differently, or do you think it is that synchronicity and just showing up each day and making your art, and then the universe starts bringing you these other people on your team? Is there a way to jump ahead in that process, or how do you see that for the aspiring artist who might be working on their art, but also needing to bring in these other elements that it takes a village?
um, I think that well, it's funny because this kind of goes into the advice question. But I think, yeah, there's definitely things that you can do to like advance the whole thing. And I guess my advice to aspiring creatives, we can just rock it out now, uh, is like find a balance in your life. Uh, my advice to aspiring creatives is handle your shit financially. Like figure that out so that you don't have pressure on your creative art, and then look at yourself as like over time, like it hope, year one, you're paying your bills some other way. Year two, maybe 25% of your income is coming from your art. Year three, 50%, year four, 75, like that sort of a progression. Because what I did, I tried to go all in with art many, those three times that didn't work. And it was because like what didn't work was that I had this job. Let's say I was a bartender and I was making my money, and then I would sell paint. I would like hang art at the bar, and then I'd sell paintings because I was at the bar talking to people, and I got to know people and built these relationships and selling more and more art. And I was like, oh man, I think I could like, you know, the bar's bringing in this much money and I'm selling this much art. Like I think the art can just make it. But then I went all in with it, and then the money from the bar, the consistent money, I didn't take that into account. Like art sales are really just not consistent until you figure out the stream that can help it be consistent. So you really need to have some way to make your income consistent. Because otherwise, like, you know, leave the bar, start trying to sell paintings, and then I exhaust all of my potential sales to like friends and family. But my overall marketing was not big enough so that I could like reach outside, and my whole flow wasn't big enough. So I exhausted everything near me. And then I was just like, I had no oars at that point, and just a sitting duck. And so then a month goes by, savings dries up, and then boom, I needed another job. And like that exact same thing happened multiple times. And so yeah, I mean, like an honest look at your finances. And it's interesting because like a budget doesn't really work. Like a traditional budget doesn't really work as a creative artist as well as an independent artist, because you don't have a salary. You don't have a consistent amount of money coming in. So it's not like you can be like, cool, I have $3,000 coming in. So then I'm going to budget this for rent, this for that, this for that, blah, blah, blah. You're like, I'm working, like I'm hoping that this comes in, but I don't know where it will. So what I had to like learn was how to reverse engineer my expenses. And so I'd look at all my expenses. I'm like, okay, this costs this costs that, blah, blah, blah. So per month, I need to clear $3,000 a month, rather than looking at it's like a backwards equation from what other people have. So there, you're like, great, I need to clear this much amount. How am I going to do that? And that's where the projection into the future comes into play. So year one, okay, I'm going to get a job that pays me $3,000 a month, or X number, whatever it is. And then in my off time, that's when I'm going to make my art with zero pressure on your creativity to turn into money right away. Like it's like planting a farm. Like you can't expect your seeds to just like bear fruit immediately. It doesn't work like that. So you need to like really develop your plots and like have your crops, growing over time and be protected, and develop, because otherwise like it that pressure can just like squash your creativity. And like and I feel like collectors and people that want to support you, they can just, it's like nobody wants to buy desperation. They want to buy growth. They want to buy inspiration. They want to buy love, connection, beauty, feeling, like vulnerability, all these things. And none of those things can happen naturally when there's like the pressure of paying rent on that. At least not at first. Like once you get it going, then like, and the whole thing gets more mature and more developed, then like, yeah, bring on the pressure, because the flow is happening. So then it's not as big of a problem. But yeah, the financial piece is so crucial to making it as an artist. And I think that that's why, like, when I see some of my friends from college who I was in art school with, they tell me that how like proud of me that they are that I'm making it as an artist, because some of them are not professional artists. And like some giant percentage of art degree holders are not in the arts. And I feel like it's a failure of the system. Granted, I very much think that everybody involved in the system is trying their best and they have the right intention. It's just that the system is training people to, like, at the end of college, you basically get taught how to make the art and then how to make a portfolio. But the portfolio is designed to get you into a gallery. Galleries don't fucking exist anymore the way they used to. And yeah, they do, but there's only a select number of galleries and they can't support everybody. And the whole system is, it's like, but there's this huge world of people, and social media has really like, democratized the whole thing. And but like I think that that's what happens to a ton of artists is they go to art school and then they learn how to make the art and then make a portfolio, and then they get out in the world and they submit their portfolios to all these galleries along with every other motherfucker who just graduated college with an art degree, and everybody's at the same basic experience level. And out of that giant pool of people that submit portfolios, only a tiny percentage actually gets accepted. And then everyone else is like, a month goes by and 2 months goes by, and then they're like, what do I do? I guess I'll get a job doing something else, not using my degree. And then 2 months goes by, 3 months, maybe they stop making art, maybe they don't have a studio, maybe, and like before you know it, they're like so far away from their training that they just never go back. And then they become something else, or they go back to school and they get a graduate degree and then maybe become an art teacher. Some of those people might get into art, but still they come out in the same situation where they're like submitting portfolios and there's only a limited space. So like, yeah, there isn't like the business side of it and the financial understanding of like the bigger picture of things.
Yeah, and
That's
you
my fucking soapbox for you.
that's a good soapbox, man. It rings true. And I appreciate that you've tried and failed and in some aspect a couple times. One thing about artists and people that are creative and have art inside of them is that it also, I don't know, there can be that ego component. And I'm curious, like in your own experience, what was that like when you tried and it didn't work? Did it set you back artistically? Did you feel um like maybe I'm not supposed to be making art, maybe I am supposed to be swinging hammers?
Oh
What was
yeah.
the emotional side of that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely had tail between my legs, like limp back to the cave type moments and like wallow in my own sorrow about things for months and whatever at a time. Yeah. And luckily, the creative spirit is powerful. And if you listen to it, like it doesn't matter if you're making it or not, or whether you're a janitor or whatever the fuck, like you still want to do art and it still feels good to spend time making art. And like you can still connect with that like beautiful energy that happens when you're sitting there making art, like being creative. There's just like time stops or changes and like you connect with a different thought pattern or energy frequency, music, podcast, books, like you get into a different wavelength. And then like that's it's just like that's it, like that's life, that's what feels so good to do. And so like you know I like naturally just gravitate towards it. And I think everybody who's like felt that before will have this like pull, towards that. And yeah, their mind will like tell them maybe not. But I mean, luckily, I think like I had a formative experience in my college art history classes, just sitting there, like learning about all these artists throughout history. And I think just like the thing, like there was a voice in my head that just said, like, why not you? Like these people are all just people, and like, why not you? So, so it's just like I just kept coming back to the art, and because it's what I loved. Little by little, it would grow.
Yeah. I've been embodying that a lot lately, that it's more about quantity than anything. And I used to get so hung up on the quality of any given piece, and just the more I show up, the more I just enjoy it and can let go. And it seems like even the masters or the artists that we look up to, they had bodies of work that were just staggering, and they weren't all masterpieces. And
Nope.
so, yeah, that's cool. I love that you've got, yeah, the commercial projects that you do that get to be seen publicly. What kind of art do you make just for yourself?
Well, real quick, it was really fun. Uh, like when you would talk to me about your art and where you were, we had some really good conversations. The little practice art and life retreat,
Yeah.
which is another sort of like tail between my legs thing that didn't quite work, but we're coming back and it's gonna be fucking great when it happens. Probably looking at like not this coming winter, but next.
Which, just to
But
round out that story, yeah, we bought tickets. We were all set to go to this retreat that we signed up for, and then it got canceled. And so just Kayla and I came out, but we got the full art and life experience. It was everything that it should have been. And yeah, if you can expand that to more people, we had a good prototype.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it was great. And like you and I had an afternoon where we painted in the studio together, and it was fun like working with you because yeah, you were like very focused on the quality, and then you also were how you had like this judgmental voice inside your head telling you that the quality wasn't good enough. So it was like breaking you were like your inner child was wanting to play, and then your inner critic was like telling the inner child it wasn't good enough. And yeah, and so it was really fun like talking with you about that. Just, kind of trying to help you dispel your like what you thought was art and what you thought was good enough and what wasn't good enough. And that's great. That like the lesson you got was like quantity. Like don't worry. And that's my perspective is like don't sweat the small stuff. You're gonna learn how to make that eye perfect or make that shadow or color blend or whatever. You're gonna learn that if you do it enough. So the key is just to do it a lot.
Yeah, and I love that afternoon. Well, we had a really cool evening before that where Haley led a meditation and we all like visualized this tree, and it was such a cool like image. And then I was trying to like paint this tree that I saw, and then you would come over and you just like look at it and you just pick up a brush, you just like make a new mark, and then I'd be like, okay. And it was like such a letting go of control moment for me to
Yeah.
like take something that I just really wanted it to be, a testament to these inner images and this, that, and the other. And you just had this kind of playful, puckish, like take it easy, man. And it's funny because like, I'm actually teaching art to high school kids right now. And you can
Wow.
see what's that?
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there's some of these students that are just so talented, but I see a lot of the same things that I've struggled with where you can find your safe zone and you can do these things that you know how to do well. You do them over and over, everyone's impressed by them, but then, you go 2 degrees outside of that and suddenly you're confronting your limitations or the knowledge you don't have yet. And so the impulse is to retreat back to that safety. And I love with that afternoon, you're kind of brutally forcing me out of that comfort zone. And I've brought a lot of that back with me, that now it's like, yeah, it's more just what can I create through a process that is fun and exploratory and playful. And when it's done, I just put it in a folder or I give it to someone. But it's a very different approach than I used to have, which is like I have this vision, I have to get it out, and now I'm wrestling with my shortcomings.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, I know that you have a meeting coming up and then we're going to get back to part two. So let's run through a few more questions. I loved your soapboxing for aspiring creatives. With everything that you've got going on, the podcast, the murals, the retreats, just the art and life of Taylor Gallegos, what do you want your life to be like in 5 years?
Ooh. Ooh. Um, firing on all cylinders. Just making big badass art that's speaking to humanity in a connected way. Like I want to be on the level of Shepard Fairey and Banksy and those like major impact players on the world stage. That's where I would like to go with things. And I actually was thinking about, I'm gonna get on my soapbox again. I've been thinking about this question because I've been listening to all these, I've been asking it a bunch. And like that for me, I want to be big time. I want to be making major impacts. And then like with the Art and Life retreat and online courses, I want to be really helping our other artists and like, helping lift them up and help them find their creative spark and flow and everything like that. But what I would really love to see in 5 years from now is this is a long shot, I know, but I want to see a fucking evolution of consciousness in humans. Like that would be the greatest thing of all. And it all comes down to the golden rule. Like if everybody was acting by the golden rule that we all learn when we're 4, then like this world would be so much better. Like there's a war in Ukraine right now. There's war in Ethiopia. There's like all kinds of fucked up shit going on. There's global climate crises happening everywhere. There's like women's rights, gay rights, human rights. All this shit is like it's overwhelming, you know, to think about all this stuff that's happening to people, and it's being done by humans to other humans. And the people that are in control of these situations are like consciously making decisions that hurt other people on a large scale. Like some fucked up shit is going on. And like we are human beings. And I've seen some of like the most beautiful of what humanity, like what we can be as humans. We can be so sweet, loving, kind, like caring, all these things. And then we can also be absolute fucking monsters. And if we keep it up, we're gonna fucking die, and we're gonna kill all the animals, all the plant, you know, everything on this planet is gonna go extinct, other than like pigeons, crows, and rats and cockroaches. And then it's gonna be us, and like you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend your time with. So what does that say about us? Like we could either be the stewards of this land and make things so beautiful and awesome, which I think is possible, or we can destroy everything and basically be rats and cockroaches. Like, and it's up to us. And I don't know how that happens, but like, that's what I want.
Man, yeah, I'm excited for part two. I want to dig deeper. It's, you know, I think you come across a lot of time as wildly optimistic and present and just kind of steeped in this beautiful life that you've manifested around you. And I'm not sure I've had many conversations with you that really kind of take that bigger view of the world and what's happening and the place of art and creativity in it, which actually is a great segue into the question that I've just been dying to ask you, because you've asked it to me once and I've heard you ask it to a number of other people. So I think the hair on my arm is actually standing up as I ask Taylor Gallegos, what is your definition of art?
I love it. Um, for me right now, my answer is art is experimentation. And in that way, you know, it's conscious experimentation, I guess. But also you can do it without being like conscious of what you're doing. I don't think that artists have to be fully conscious of what they're doing or why. You know, flow state takes a lot of different forms, and flow state's almost like acting outside of your mind. So like I don't think that conscious thought necessarily needs to be there, but um, you know, like art is not static. Art is an evolution of process, skills, ideas, concepts, perspectives. And so like as an artist, what we're doing from day one is we're just trying things. And as experimentation, I feel like if you take that approach, then it like removes all of the pressure of, you know, like what you were feeling of like a quality that has to be there, you know, like when you think of it that way, like the quality, you know, like you're expecting, like if there's a quality and an attachment to a quality, then you have an expectation, and then like you're setting yourself up for um you know, for suffering really. Whereas if you just think of it as experimentation and like taking shots at goal and, you know, throwing darts, throwing spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks, then like you kind of remove yourself and your own like, I don't know, your own connection, your own ego from the process, and you get out of the way and you just act like a child. You like think just purely of like what about this? Or what about this? Or maybe we could put these two things together. Oh, what does that look like? And if you just experiment a lot, eventually you're gonna like find that little fractal branch that's gonna be you. And yeah, so in that way, it's just throwing spaghetti at walls, throwing paint at canvas, throwing clay together, throwing whatever the fuck kind of art you do, just putting it out there and trying
That's
it.
wild, man. Because like the way you described that, and earlier you mentioned like the inner child that just wants to make this art, and which is very much an experimental thing. Like that's the beating heart, but then wrapped around it is the business aspect and the sustainability, and then what you were just talking about so passionately about, the world needing transformation. There's like this experimentation, and it seems with particularly your art and a lot of others, there is this intention, there is this um idea that things could be more beautiful, or at least reveal the beauty that is here, and maybe we could start treating each other better, you know moving towards that world. So with the art you make, I mean, I think that you do come from this place of childhood creativity. Have you seen or experienced your work affect people in a deeper level, maybe moving towards that shift that you're describing? How do you wield that power to create
Hmm.
that change?
Yeah, nice. Um, yeah, I've definitely seen it. As an artist doing custom projects for people, people come to me for like with an idea, with a concept, with a vision, and and also like this sweet vulnerability because you know if you hire a plumber, that's a need. You need to get that toilet fixed. You don't need a mural. You don't need a painting of something or someone. None of that's necessary. And so like it's always coming from a different place within somebody. And I think it really kind of comes from their inner child or their creative spark. And so um not only do I see like the art affect people in a positive way when it's like done, and what they get from it, but like I go through the process with them and I sort of like hold space for them while they talk about it because a lot of these people, they don't consider themselves creative in a lot of ways, and so it's like they don't even know how to really like talk about it or think about it. So they're going out on a limb, they're vulnerable. And so like walking them through this process of like the experimentation, the creativity, all the things. I see that like this like blossoming that happens in them that's like creative and I don't know. I like to imagine that it ripples into time forward for them in positive ways.
It's
Um,
like it's like art begets art.
yeah, totally. Totally. It's an organic process. When you see that it works in one spot, then you can replicate the process in other ways and move forward.
Hmm. Can you think of a specific example where something you created had a tangible like impact on someone or affect someone on a deep level?
Um, yeah, I've told this story one time. I mean, this question was there last year too. And like there's a couple of portraits that I've done. There portraits that I've done of like relatives of people who've passed. Those like really hit people hard and like in a beautiful way. Because it's like an honoring and of somebody who's no longer here. Um, but but also just like seeing the like morale boosts that it brings to like I did a mural at Anheuser-Busch here in the Bay Area, like 6 months back, and I was there for a week and a half, and the mural was like transforming this space in this giant warehouse, and the whole building's this like concrete, brick, stainless steel, like very hardcore. Like everybody's got work helmets on and safety goggles, and they're like, it's very structured and organized. And like these people that would like get off their shift and they'd be like exhausted, from obviously having like a hard like industrial style workday, and then they would just like stop and like look at the mural and look at the progress and be like, you could see what was happening in them. They would just sort of like get lit up, and they're like, they would be like, dude, this is looking so good. And, like you could feel that they were just so happy for like humanity, like this like touch of humanity that they were getting to connect with. And like creative process is like the organic element is like very human, I feel like, and not everybody gets that.
That's super cool. Well, we just have a few more minutes until part 2 starts. Hit us with some wisdom off the top of your head. Enlighten all those lovely listeners.
On the spot wisdom. Oh man. Tell people you love them when you feel it. Like you never know. You never know what's going to happen, where you're going to go, where other people are going to go. And we're only here for a short time.
Yeah, man. I feel that. Last night I was driving back from Denver and I re-listened to the podcast with Adam, and it was so bizarre because while he was talking, he was just there. Like it wasn't hard to listen to. It was just like just totally there. And to hear a friend who was so full of life, so full of all of these same qualities that we have, talking excitedly about his future. And yeah, that was a lesson in exactly what you just described. I think that kind of rippled through our community pretty strong, just seeing how beautiful life is and how temporary beauty is, and not waiting to tell someone that you love them or to just appreciate today. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You and I both live in pretty like safe, bubbled worlds relative to a lot of places on the planet. And we've been really privileged to not have to say goodbye to a lot of people early. And yeah, that definitely um that hit us. So yeah. But we learned a lot, all of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Learned a lot. It like taught us how to live.
Yeah, in a way, the way that he passed like was like a magic trick and a public art display at the same time. Like it's been so affecting, and he taught us so much.
Yeah. Definitely. Yep. Big love to Adam.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna take a break, and when we come
Real
back,
quick. Let's
yeah,
we gotta well, I wanna say thank you to you, by the way. This is the part of the podcast where I thank my guest
mm,
host for being on the podcast. And yeah, Ryan, it's been fucking awesome watching the progression and like the growth path that has happened in your life and your creative world. So I'm excited to see where you go with it and where it develops into. And it's fun. It's fun following along. So thanks for being on the podcast as a
hey man,
host.
like I said, a huge honor, and you've had so much to do with my creativity that I cannot I cannot tell you enough how much I love you.
Love you too, man. Love you too. Where can people follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram at thinair, which is THINAYR. And then I have a YouTube channel called Uncomplication. Yeah. Love
Nice.
to, yeah.
Everybody get out there and give him a follow. Follow along with the fun. Watching Ryan throw spaghetti at walls.
That's right. Colorful spaghetti.
Yep. All right. Well, let's take a break. I'm gonna go have this business meeting with Amy and Delia, and then we'll be back for part two.
Sounds good.
All right. Cheers.
And we're back. Welcome back, Taylor.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. It's nice to be
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. We had a few hours pass in the interim,
We did. We did.
unbeknownst to our listeners.
Yeah, they had no idea because we're just like right back for recording time. But
It's Hollywood magic,
yeah,
but it's kind of
man.
nice. Yeah. We had that first part of the conversation during daylight and like all heady, and now it's dark. We have a couple whiskeys poured and ready for the back nine.
Yeah, we haven't even cheersed yet. So,
Oh, yeah. Cheers,
Ryan,
man.
cheers
To art and life.
to art and life. Ooh,
Mm.
that's nice. And cheers to the listener. You know,
Yeah.
thanks for being here. I want to say thanks. You guys are awesome. Appreciate you.
Yeah, 100 episodes in. That's a following.
Dude, people are still
Right?
rocking with it.
It's not just your mom anymore.
I know, and my mom does think I'm cool, but someone else might think so too. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. What are you sipping on?
Yeah, I bought a bottle of Rocky Mountain Stranahan's Blue Peak single malt whiskey, which I've never had the blue label Stranahan's. I wanted something Colorado, so
Yeah, I've had
yeah,
Stranahan's
tasty,
before,
tasty.
never the blue label, but nice. Some
Yeah,
of that
how about you?
local. Um, I'm rocking this Angel's Envy. It's a
Mm.
Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey finished in port wine barrels.
Whoa.
It's tasty.
Living in the lap of luxury.
Oh, we're doing it up big time
That's
here.
that's mural money right there.
No, that's actually lawyer money. I'm
Ah,
I'm
yeah.
staying with Colin,
Thank you, Colin.
Colin Moreno, who you all can hear in a previous episode not too far back. And he always lets me stay with him when I do my murals in San Francisco. And it's much appreciated, Colin. I know you're listening to this. So thanks, man. Cheers to you.
Cheers to you. Awesome human.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so the back nine. Man, there's so many different places that we could dive in. I think what I was going to ask you is I love your style of creating because it is very go with the flow and it invites in those fortunate chances. So the fact that we were trying to schedule this and we have planned shift and then, just taking that, I don't know, couple hour break to do what we needed to do, that feels very much part of your process. And I've seen you paint murals where you like show up and you might have like a loose idea, but you just know that everything's going to come together. And I'm wondering, in your artistic career, has that always been the case or did you have to figure that out?
Good question. Um, I think that it's probably been I think it's got something that I've gotten to through time. When you're starting out, it helps a lot more to have a plan because uh at this point I've seen all the ways that things can go sideways and I've figured out how to handle those things in general. Or I'm like, always running into new shit that goes sideways and you just figure it out and then like you just handle it. You do whatever needs to be done. And like a lot of art, painting and drawing, it's the same basic structure to everything. It's like light and shadow creates form, and then color sits on top of form. And so, like whether you're painting a face, a person, a figure, still life, architecture, whatever, it doesn't matter, abstract, anything. It's the same basic principles apply, and you just gotta like go through the process and now I definitely like trust the process. I just lean into it. And so I don't really need to know exactly what's going to happen. I just know that it will happen.
Yeah, that's cool. And this being art and life, I see how that applies in art, light and shadow. And in a way, I think that this podcast being an example, we just kind of trust that we'll show up and we'll know what to do when the time comes. Do you see in just your living that there's like light and shadow and basic principles that you just put color on top of?
Yeah, I would say, you know, yeah, just have fun and go with it. Just see, lean into experience, keep it as optimistic and positive as you can, as I can, and everything seems to work out one way or another. And then also like I try to not be too attached to things and to like a schedule or an outcome or this or that, because it allows, I have an idea of how it's going to go, but everything kind of changes and flows, which I know is challenging for people to deal with. I fully understand that. And like all my friends and family, thanks for sticking with me this long because I know it's a pain in the ass. And it can ruffle feathers of people, like, because it's not how a lot of people roll. Um, I see it like with, when I'm interacting with my friends who have kids, like it's a challenge or some of them. You guys seem to be pretty go with the flow, but it can be a challenge because it takes a little while to like get things moving. And then if you're going in a direction, you can't just like switch and turn back because you got these like little people that are, in tow. And so it can like create a challenge at times when I
Hmm.
interface with other people.
And is that something that you've always embodied when you were a kid, where you just roll with the punches, go with the flow? Did you ever get freaked out by change or things not going according to your plan?
Hmm. No, I've always been very go with the flow. Yeah. Nice and easy.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it is nature versus nurture. Because I have two kids, and one of them is, I mean, they're both wonderful and they do adapt well. But my son is he likes structure, he likes to know what to expect. And then my daughter will just climb up on the highest thing and jump into the air with the faith that I'm going to somehow catch her. Like I'm not even paying attention, and she leaps off of like the highest point, and I have to like instinctually catch her. I think her autobiography would be called "Soaring Without a Plan."
That's
And
beautiful.
it both works out. But I'm trying to picture you as a little kid. Like, were you the one climbing up on stuff and just like jumping and knowing that like the your parents were gonna catch you or you're gonna land on your feet?
Yeah. I guess I was maybe kind of somewhere in between. I mean, when I'm thinking about me and my brother, Cam, who's been on the podcast, he was like a daredevil. As a little kid, he was just like crashing through walls, riding BMX bikes, and have his like full face helmet when he's like 6 and launching off of shit. And I was always more like cautious than that. Um, but in terms of like going with the flow, yeah, I've always just been like, sure, whatever. And I don't know if Cam's like more structured than me in that way. He's pretty chill too. I think a lot of it comes from our mom probably, and just like she's very just like, hey, if it's good, we're good. No worries. And if it's not good, let's figure out what needs to be made good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I was thinking leading up to the second half here that you typically start the first part with what are you really into? And so I was going to ask you in the beginning of the back nine, what are some things that you are trying to avoid, or some of the things that you're trying to do less of?
Yeah. Cool. Um, Trying to do less of. I guess I'm trying to streamline myself and and the like my art in my process in my murals, like in the business structure and in me making the art and murals, like I'm trying to I'm always thinking of ways that I can streamline it so that I can be more focused on the art and like just that. So I have an assistant, Anthony Evans. He helps me with painting and live wedding art, and he's awesome, super talented, and he's sharp as fuck, and we work really well together. And so, what I'm trying to do with the murals is, figure out the way to work really well with an assistant so that, when we arrive on site, he sets up all the stuff, set up the table, set up the paints, get everything ready, brushes, water, all the things. And I'm like on the art immediately. And then, sometimes I'll have him fill in some spaces and whatnot, do some painting and then some, and then like a lot of times I just need help like with the basic bullshit, which isn't super fun for him to do. He loves when he can do the painting, but at the same time, like what I need is I need help with like the monotonous, cleaning of brushes and things like that. So, and then the business is kind of the same setup of like, how can we optimize my time and energy to be focused on the things that only I can do in the business and like where my strong suit sits. Um, yeah. And then in life, just trying to optimize for awesome.
Like that. Yeah.
I've taken detours and done dumb shit in my life lots and lots and lots of times, and
Mm.
just try to make smarter decisions as I go along, and not waste my time on little errands or whatever that I don't need to do because you know, I've got all my artwork and whatnot going, and then Haley and Nova are home, and I want to give them as much attention as I can, and like have as much time to play and do fun shit and go camping and go, for walks and hikes and whatnot. So it's like kind of just like smoothing out the wrinkles, ironing them out as I go along. I don't know. What would you say? What are you trying to like do less of?
Yeah, I was actually talking to a friend about this earlier today. Because you just turned 40
Yeah.
and happy birthday.
Hey, thanks, man.
And I beat you
You
to
were
that number
there.
by just like a month or two.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Happy birthday to you.
thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting milestone and it came a lot quicker than I thought. And I haven't read this book, so I don't know much about it, but I think the title of it is The Second Mountain.
Hmm.
And a friend was telling me about this book that's about like the first half of your life, you're climbing this mountain and you have a destination in mind, this image of yourself or where you're trying to get. And then around middle age, like 40, you kind of come to the top of a mountain, but it often is not quite what you thought it was going to be. And the second half of your life, you're climbing your second mountain, but you have this new perspective and you get to choose what you want to carry up that second mountain with you.
Hmm.
So I think for me, I mean, I spent my last decade really just heads down, chasing kind of a dream of, I don't know, all the normal bullshit, the wealth and, running a company and all the stuff that I was doing. And now, yeah, I feel like my focus is so much more on the people that matter to me and the things that fill me. And I would rather make less money and do more awesome, like you said, like that
Yeah.
optimization for awesome. So yeah, I'm saying no to a lot more things, which I think when I was younger, it's just like, yes, 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 I can do that. I can fill that gap. I can, and now I'm a lot more discerning about where I invest time.
Yeah. Yeah. And thinking about the second mountain thing, I've thought of that too. You get to 40 and I definitely want to, I'd love to live to 80, and I'd love to live to 90 or even 100 if I can be like healthy and happy with it. And
Cheers
um
to that.
cheers to that. Um but it's interesting thinking of your life. Okay, we're 40 now, and we've gone through all these experiences. Like, you can think back through your life to all the different standout experiences in your formative years and all the things. And that's your first mountain, and then you're going for your second mountain. But it's cool because you're not starting at sea level. You're starting at like base camp. So your next 40 is like you're already like you're running, and maybe you want to start some things over or do something things like totally different, but at least you have like all the experience behind you to like base your decisions on and things like that.
Yeah, and I mean it's a good analogy because with mountain climbing, there's peaks and valleys, and you get those high points and those low points, and I feel like the more you go through the terrain, the more you have that confidence to just be prepared for anything. And it's a lot of what we've been talking about. And I like that idea of like there is creativity, certainly that inner child that just wants to be messy and throw spaghetti, but then there is a power to limitations, like saying no to things, or to have a process that reliably gets you to a result that you want. And I think when I was younger, I really I didn't want any kind of structure. I didn't want any kind of, like the process should just be fun and wild and experimental. So I'm curious, has your process matured over time? Is it kind of the same approach but just refined? Or I
Oh
think that
yeah.
yeah, talk about your process maybe a little bit, just for any given thing, because I see it a lot, like whether you're painting a mural or you're planning like a 40th birthday blowout, like there's some sort of like framework within which chaos and beauty can like unfurl.
I like that. Totally. Um, yeah, it's funny as you're asking me that, and as I'm like, my answer is sort of formulating in my head. The visual is that of creating a sculpture, actually, not even a painting. And um, like with a sculpture, let's say it's like a clay sculpture that you're doing. First, you want to like get all the clay into the three-dimensional shape that you want. And then you start like cutting big chunks off because you know that you don't want anything over there and you want to add something here, and you start to form it. And it's very rough at first. And like the 40th birthday, I was like, I don't know, I just want to spend a week surfing in Carlsbad, surfing every day and having fun at the beach. And and then doing a painting, it's like I want this general this shape and this composition. I want like a triangle with sort of like outliers. So I'll just draw a triangle and some lines, and like knowing that like that's gonna, not even knowing what that's gonna end up being. And then little by little, you start to like make cuts and shape things and form things, add color, add this and that. And then like um and like the process is to just stay with it, and just keep coming back to it and making decisions and being present with like your feelings. Because a lot of time, one thing I do, or yeah, one thing I do in the creative process is I just listen to the ideas that pop up in my head. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll try that. Experiment. I'll try that. I'll try that. Boom, idea. And as it goes along, it just keeps on sharpening in. Um and every layer that I do, talking about painting, I maybe, maybe I'll start with I'll be working in the mid-tones, and so that means it's like not super bright and not super dark. It's in the mid-tone, and it doesn't matter what color I use. It could be like any hue. And so then I'll just start drawing shapes, and then maybe I'll be on like the darker side of the mid-tone. So it's like middle darkness, but down a little bit in like a blue. Draw out the shape. And then I'll go to the lighter side of the mid-tone in a different color, say red. And then I'll go back to a darker side. And so like as I'm drawing the shapes, every and I'm just thinking in what I'm drawing, I'm just thinking shadows and highlights, structure, stuff like that. So at the beginning, it looks super rough and it looks crazy and chaotic and it looks ugly and funky and weird. But then, and as I go through my painting, I'm sort of like stretching farther into the brighter side and farther into the darker side of all these, of whatever colors I'm using. So I'll kind of like bounce around the color wheel in circles, moving farther out into the darker and the highlight. And by the end, after I've gone through the process where, let's say I'm using red, blue, and yellow, I have, once the process is done, I will have done a bunch of midtones of those red, blue, and yellow. And then I've also done like stretched out into the highlights and the darks of the red, blue, and yellow. And then I'll hit it with like a final dark and a final highlight. And then that's like that's what makes it all like snap into place. And yeah, I guess the process of like how I plan a project or plan a birthday party or whatever, it's all kind of similar where I'll just like move things around in shapes and colors and try things in different places and lean into it and carve and add and whatever.
Yeah.
Does that make
And be
sense?
willing. Yeah, definitely. It definitely. And when we did that little painting exercise, I had never done it quite that way. And the way you were describing it just now is very much how it felt, where you are just kind of manipulating this amorphous thing that starts to kind of take more and more shape and clarity as you kind of push it back and forth between the lights and the darks. And so it's kind of cool how you're by the time you've done a painting, you've probably made like a million decisions, but each
Yeah.
one of them was so small that you're never really like at risk of like making a mistake because they're all just like these small, I don't know, kind of like intuitive corrections, I guess.
Right. And that's the beauty of it is that there really is no such thing as a mistake because let's say I do something that's quote unquote incorrect. Let's say it's in the wrong spot or it's whatever. If I didn't make that mark, then I wouldn't necessarily know what over the edge or wrong or whatever
Mm.
would actually be. So sometimes it helps to make a mistake, quote unquote, because then that helps you figure out where the actual correct move sits.
You know, what's funny is as you're talking, I'm thinking paint, and then I'm thinking about how that applies so much to relationships too,
Oh yeah.
and just a lot of things in life where yeah, there's no real mistakes, but there's definitely edges and boundaries that you can kind of like, I'm gonna step kind of far over this and just see what happens. And you're kind of playing with that edge.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, where I had this written down just as a question to ask you because I know this effect where it's really easy to get on a podcast or to be sharing wisdom and um we can fall into that authority kind of place really easily, especially when we're good at stuff. But I found, and tell me if you think this is true, that when you hear someone speaking really eloquently and from experience about philosophy or art, a lot of the times people are saying the things that they themselves most need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found that, I can sit and I can talk about how yeah, the world is inherently okay and this, that, and the other. And really that's because I'm just deep down trying to convince myself of that because it's my greatest fear that it might not be.
Yeah.
And so, as I hear you kind of talking about these edges, where do you see your edges? Like what keeps you up at night? What's maybe, we're hearing a lot of the highlights, but like where are your shadows?
Yeah. Nice. Where are my shadows? Um, my shadows sit in my habits, I guess, or I guess in my like ways of being. Like I said, it's hard to interact with me at times. And I know that. And um, because like there's my vision of what I want to have happen, and then like, but I'm not always taking into account what everybody else wants, or what would work for other people. If we had Haley right here answering this question, she could throw out a laundry list. Uh, and it's like, I think that like there was I don't know, my formative years were challenging. My parents were divorced, when I was like 5, and my dad was my dad was always doing his thing. That he moved out, and um so then like we would see him when it worked out, and sometimes we saw him a lot and sometimes we didn't, and it like was, I don't know, it's kind of like his world in some way. Let me just say, he did a great job, and he's an awesome person, um and he's shown a lot of love through the years, and our relationship's good. But I think there was a lot of time where like he was just trying to figure out what he was doing with his life and how to live his life, and he didn't have great examples for how to show others care and attention. And so then that was sort of imparted on me. And then so it sort of like formed me into like I have my ego style is aloof. If we're talking about like the Celestine prophecy, there's like four ego styles. There's the bully, the poor me, aloof, and the interrogator. And those ego styles, we all have various combinations of them, and we use them. They kick in automatically when we're feeling uncomfortable, and so then it's like a defense mechanism. And we learn it from how we're trying to get energy from our parents as children. It's like a formative thing. So your ego style will be like in relation to your parents' ego style, because you were in relation to them. And so I was always like wanting energy, but then it was like, yeah, I like created this sort of like aloof ego style, showing like trying to act like I didn't need it, like I don't need anyone's energy. I'm like good without it. And so that like aloofness can be like hurtful to other people that I'm around. Um and so it was really great, and that's one hypothesis, one philosophy, the Celestine prophecy, that I've just really resonated with and makes sense in this reality with the way people are. So yeah, um I definitely like that's sort of the thing that I'm always like trying to be aware of, is that I might be making people feel like I don't care about them, or that I'm like that they don't matter or something, and it's like comes from my ego, and trying to, like it's like a formative thing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot that you said that I resonate with. And I had a friend recently say, and it's really quite wise, that people will construct entire lives to run from the one thing that they don't want to face. Like our deepest fears will construct a whole life just to avoid that. And I'm curious with the story that you just shared. I mean, art is it's a wonderful way to get that attention and that energy. And how do you see that ego and that art kind of interplaying? Because a lot of artists historically and present day have had very large egos. So, it's not a bad thing because we have this art, but how do you play with that kind of self-knowledge, but also the ego aspect of being Taylor Gallegos, making his art?
Right. Um, well, yeah, it's interesting. The formative, okay, so like the ego style, the aloof, the art, making, art was definitely a way to get energy and attention. Um, because I didn't feel like I could do it other ways. And um and growing up, I remember like I would make drawings and I would spend my time drawing and I would try to get, my dad to look at it. And he would look at it, but he'd be like, "Oh, cool," And I'm like, "No, but look, like there's like detail in there and this is that and that." And like um he'd be like, "Yeah, cool, it's great," because he didn't like he's a business person. He's like in sales and that's how he thinks. And he's never had any like training or awareness in art at all, and never, and so like he didn't really see it or know how to see it. And then my mom would always like really like look at it and like dive in with me. And so there was this sort of like duality. And I think, and like, and I would really try to, get energy with art, try, as a way that I could impress people and make them like, ooh, ah, cool. And, um, and so that, that like pushed me, I think it really like, cause I was like, well, maybe if I make it like even better, then dad will really like it, and then so I had this like sort of dual thing with like wanting to impress my dad and then like my mom supporting. And so it like it actually was like the perfect combination to like push me to get as good as I could be. um and I was unaware of all this for so long. And then when I read that book, Celestine Prophecy, that like all of a sudden I was like, holy fuck. Like this is my life. This is like what I've been doing this whole time, is like trying to impress people. Um and boom, I just like stopped for a little bit, stopped making art. I was like, this is stupid. Like, what am I doing? Like, this is, to live through, like, to do everything for the ego, like, get out. Like, this is, and then, so then I didn't do anything for a little while. And then I just missed it, and I just like missed the action of it, the activity, the beauty, the mindset, the fun. And I just started drawing again and started making art. But this time it was from like, it wasn't for anybody else. I like wasn't even showing anyone anything. I was just doing it. And like I like found my footing again and like found myself in a space of like art, from like, trying to operate from my soul space um rather than for anybody else or any other thing, any ego type thing. And yeah, it's interesting, like the ego, the formative years of the ego, it's like really just trying to get energy from our parents and trying to get energy from the world. And like the main, I feel like the big things that we're all trying to hear back from either our parents or the world is that we matter, you know, or that like that we exist. And that's like we're enough. And like that's so much of like, look at the world, look at everyone's decisions, look at the things we do, like the things we buy, uh, like all the decisions we make, like so much of it is like trying to like answer that or fill that void inside of us that we feel, which is like that we fear that we're not enough, or that we're not good enough, or that we don't matter, or that we don't even fucking exist. That's a hypothesis I have.
Yeah, that was good, man. That's good shadow work right there. I don't know a single person that I'm like intimately connected with or in deep conversations with that doesn't have some reflection of that basic story. And it always is wild to me to find these people that I respect so much, and I just see them as these really beautiful humans. And you go a few layers deep, and there's a lot of that self-doubt and that, negative self-talk, or yeah, almost like the imposter syndrome that we all carry some of these shadow elements. And when we're praised as being really good for the things that we do, we kind of know in the back of our mind, like, yeah, but I'm kind of putting that on. And it creates this interesting situation. At least I felt this, that it's hard for me to accept the praise of others, or to see the version of myself that other people see, because I know, kind of like what you're describing, this yearning to feel important and never really getting the attention that we were looking for maybe when we were younger. So yeah, I like the way that you just described that. So here's a question then, in that vein. When you are coming up against your limitations, or I'm trying to think. So let me just tell the story that's on my mind. So I have a friend that I was inviting to come and just be a guest speaker in an art class that I'm teaching, and it kicked off this whole conversation about that kind of imposter syndrome, where from an outward appearance, you're highly successful, you're doing these things. Yeah, wait, do you have times where you show up and you are self-doubting, or you feel like maybe your own kind of marketing has outpaced your abilities, or like, I don't know, do you have some stories of maybe not the grand slams, but the really wrestling with like where you're at versus where you want to be?
Yeah. Uh Definitely. And I think the place where where it's happened the most is on Instagram.
Fucking Instagram.
I mean, and I mean I think it's a testament, or it's like it's kind of showcases like how real the that effect is, like the imposter, the outside, like I mean, I feel like the Instagram effect, you're like, when I got on there, all of a sudden I was exposed to all the artists of the world. And like, there are so fucking many incredible artists, like incredible, um, like mind-blowing shit that's being done all over the planet. And, and I went from thinking that I was like kind of, like kind of hot shit to being like, oh, I'm nothing. I should probably quit. Like, this is like, there's so many better people, so many more people out there. And like, maybe it's because of like when you're studying art in school, when, like there's just this like timeline of all these artists, and there's like one or two really great one, like 10 or whatever in each movement that are really noteworthy. Um, and then, I'd go to galleries, and I kind of thought that I like knew a lot of the galleries or something, but like it's one of those where like, the more you know, the more know you don't know. And
Mhm.
like I would just like saw all this amazingness, and I was like, man, I don't think I can hang. And like, yeah, it just makes me think that like that's so real for so many people. And I've got like a lot of training and a lot of hours and a bachelor of fine arts and all this stuff. And like, for me to feel that way, like, what's somebody who's just like starting out in a field supposed to think? And yeah, it's like That's just that's a low feeling. And yeah, it just kind of like crushes your spirit. It's not easy.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I've never really done social media, and just recently, because I have been doing more art, I'm like, yeah, Instagram, that's where you go. And so I've been posting, and it's been really enjoyable. I think just to like have that as an outlet so that things don't just like go immediately into the folder, but at least like my homies can see it. But
Yeah.
as I've been on there longer and I'm just like following more, you just get sucked into that scrolling. And like you said, man, just like mind blowing shit. And that's kind of the world we live in, where everyone's voice is turned up so loud, competing for that attention. It's not even like one parent we're trying to impress, it's like the entire fucking world.
Right.
And I don't
Right.
know, like the escalation effect that can happen seems like a departure from the spirit of art. When you're doing art, and I'm not knocking anyone who's like kicking ass and like crushing it on Instagram, thousands of likes on a post. But I do wonder what that does to the human expression when it is plugged into the attention economy, and we're no longer, putting up something in our local village square just to bring out some color and human qualities in a place that would just be a brick wall, but we're actually like every day having to, throw something else on that altar. Um, yeah, and it's here's a little segue into a conversation I was curious to have with you. In my Instagram feed, there's a few AI artists that have popped up, and I liked a couple of them, and now there's like two of them that are like pretty consistent in the feed. And it blows my mind that every single one of them has probably like, I don't know, 5 to 10 times the likes of the traditional artists that are actually, doing the work. And these AI artists, they're able to post, 5, 6, 7, 8 images a day that are all like these permutations. And so I don't know. I think we talked about this a little bit when I was out there in California with you, but I'm curious, beyond the AI, just the whole way that art is consumed these days. I think you've been in it a lot longer than I have. And you talked a little bit about it, but yeah, what's your impression? Where do you see it going, and where would you like to see it go?
Well, yeah, it's such a trip, the AI element. And like 2 months ago, I read an article about how some artist from Colorado Springs entered this AI image into as like a multimedia type thing. He didn't lie, he just like explained the process, but there was AI involved, and he won the art contest. And like everybody got really like up in arms about it. And then there's this new thing that's happened in the last like week where people are like, you submit a bunch of your portrait, like bunch of
Mm,
photos of yourself, and then this program will like cross it with different styles, so you can like me as a Van Gogh, me as a Rembrandt, me as a whatever, and like and like so many fucking artists all over the place. And then everyone's up in arms about that because the AI programs are like trolling actual like digital artists, original human
mm,
artists and artists
yeah,
for their styles,
it's
and
almost
then
plagiarism, right?
ripping it and then making the new thing. And so yeah, definitely almost plagiarism in a strong way. Um, but I guess I don't feel solid about it, that it is fully plagiarism or that it's a bad thing. Because, or even like, like the Instagram effect that I was talking about, how like it makes you feel so shitty that like these people are all so fucking awesome. AI is ridiculously awesome. I've loved everything I've seen come out. It's so fucking nasty. But, I'm not gonna say but, I'm gonna say um, it's also a computer program, and it's not a human, and it's going to go faster than us. It can make way more art than I ever can in a shorter amount of time. It can do, and there's something special about the human spirit. I feel, I believe, the human creativity. And we're I don't think like AI is not going I don't think AI is going to replace human art, but it is going to take up space
Mm.
in the art space. And I don't think it's not art. Um and I don't think it should be like not valued as art. And um AI is learning from humans, but humans are going to learn from AI also. And like um there was some book that I read not too long ago. There's a couple of books I've read that are talking about the future and saying that like the future of humanity is actually like a synthesis with technology, and it's already happening. It's been happening for a long time, but it's just going to go further and further that direction. So like I guess in I until before I joined Instagram, really I was and like before I got an iPad, I was feeling more traditional and more of a purist. I'm like, I just want to paint and draw and use like real things. Um, and then I sort of had to change of heart. I was like, no, you like to do that is sort of ignoring what's actually happening around us. So like, why fight it? Like, why? I guess like if you can't beat them, join them. So like, I'm not gonna like I think to be able to use traditional stuff like materials and things is like I would say it's really important. If you want to be a full-rounded, well-rounded artist, then you need to be able to use all the things and sometimes use technology and sometimes not. There's all these tricks that I use to make murals happen, and a lot of those tricks help me do it a lot faster. Now, still, I have training. So like if I needed to, like if power went out, then I could do it without it. If I didn't have the tools, I could figure it out and I could make it happen. And that's where I want to be as well-rounded as I can be so that I can, not be reliant on it. Because I think reliance on it makes you're just not as like strong of an artist, I guess. Um, I digress.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild.
It's a trip. It's a trip.
Because I started watercoloring, which I'd never really done before, and I was learning a little bit, or not even learning, just like experimenting, and it was really just like free flowing and bright and colorful. And then I got on Instagram and I saw some post. I still remember what it was. It's funny, like I think I'll probably always remember this image because it's the first AI image that I saw.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's just like seared in my brain. I just saw it. I was like, man, that is phenomenal. Like, because I had no idea it was AI. And when I clicked in and saw, it said Mid Journey, and I was like, okay, what's that? So I started researching. And before long, I had gone from my like, watercolor set to sitting in front of this Discord server I had set up, like typing prompts. And all of a sudden, I was just generating these watercolors that were like way, way, way beyond anything that I could do.
Yeah.
And it was really disheartening in one hand, but on the other hand, I don't know, maybe this is just personality type or whatever, but I'm back at the watercolors because it's just more enjoyable. And there was sort of like this hollow experience of just like typing a few words and having this thing pop up. And maybe like to the attention economy, like those better quality images are more valuable. But to me, like art is not just about like, hey, look at this thing. It's about like, I made this thing and my brain is in this piece of art, and that can't really be easily replaced with command line prompting. But like you said, I also agree that it's not going away. The people that are good at it, they're also learning a craft, and I think at the end of the day, it's just another branch of the artistic tree. And it's kind of interesting to think about how in the old days, a lot of these arts were very time consuming just in the process. And I'd even include things like like video editing or computer programming as an art form. Like you used to have to know how to write like command line, ones and zeros almost to make a computer program. And now there's been so many layers on top of that that other people have built that you can just show up as a 10-year-old and like build a game.
Right.
And so with the AI, it's almost like it has democratized the process so that now creativity is the currency. And some of the things that I'm seeing, it's like, wow, like that is just a very creative mind kind of pushing this computer to its limits. And they didn't have to learn all of the skills to get there. And I think, especially for people that haven't invested that time in a traditional, expensive, time-consuming artistic background, like for a certain demographic, that will be, a place that they'll move into and set up shop and be refining those techniques. But I don't know. I agree with you in that, like, symbiosis, I guess, between the machine and the mind. And if these can be tools for the human mind to like tell deeper and deeper stories, then it's at least cool. It's at least interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I feel like one thing that it brings up and what it brings us back to the question of what's your definition of art? And this is like, is art the process? Is art the final product? Does art need to happen like through a human's hand? Can art be, computer prompts that a human thinks of and that comes up, or computer prompts that an AI thinks of? Like, take the human out of it even.
Hmm.
And like one of my favorite quotes, and I've said it on this before, is from the painter Robert Henri. And he said, the goal is not to make art. The goal is to be in that wonderful state of being where making art is inevitable.
Hmm.
So, like, the art isn't necessarily the thing that you're making. The art is to be in that creative flow and that creative fun space. And that's like truly what like we're really trying to do. So, democratizing creativity, making it so that anybody on the street can make beautiful images that they love, like, fuck yeah. you know every more people can engage in art and feel like
Hmm.
they're qualified and like feel like they can be part of the conversation. Like, that's a win, because and I think that some of the main people that are against it or feel some sort of like aversion to it are artists who are worried about losing a job, and which is understandable. It's people's livelihoods, it's people's styles that they've developed through time and energy and processes and whatnot. But at the same time, like, art is not a competition. There are competitions for landing art projects and landing things, and I understand that. But like, art isn't, it's not like there isn't a Super Bowl of art. We're not like competing on Sundays against each other for who's the better artist. Like, art is a connection to oneself and one's experience, and like it's meaning making, and it's philosophy, and it's like and it's play. So,
Hmm.
or it's conveying messages, whatever. It's like all these different things. So it's not like AI art does not take away from that. Actually, it like augments it. It enhances it in a lot of ways for people in society.
Yeah, gosh, the thing that you said that I'm like I'm still chewing on is I don't know what it feels like to be plagiarized by AI. Like when I actually think about putting myself in the situation of an artist who has developed a style and now that style is like a prompt that's being used over and over and over. I was really relieved when I was trying to create something in the style like I've kind of developed over the years and I couldn't through AI. But if I was a big enough artist or if it had enough data on it, like I'm sure it could create the types of images that I wanted to create And then when everyone has access to something that like came from my brain initially, like that's kind of a new fuzzy edge to me. But I want to
But
take
you could take that as being offended and be upset, or you could take it as a compliment.
that's
And
true.
like imitation is the highest form of flattery. So like if no one's paying, if no one's copying you, then you're not doing anything that's like worthy. And if you
Ouch,
are,
Taylor.
like,
Ouch.
so you take it as a compliment, you
Yeah.
know? You and you will, you know, you're gonna see AI do it copying you soon, Ryan. So don't worry about that.
Yeah. We're
But
all
also
in the
like
matrix.
style is a byproduct of intention and parameters. So like just, you know, if your intention is I think by trying to keep one's own style and stay true to your own style, you're putting the cart before the horse.
Hmm.
And you're not evolving. You've like hit, you know, that's like a musician like having a hit album and then like trying to replicate the album just in new ways. It's like the truly dynamic artists are the ones who reinvent themselves on every album, and you can't fucking keep up with that. Try it, AI. You can't, like, because you're making new fresh shit all the time, and like AI is copying and synthesizing, and so like in that way, like it can do that all day long, but you're always going to be coming out with unique things if you're true to your intention and your style and your, you know, your flow, like listening to your heart and your mind and your soul, whatever. Like you're gonna make something that no one's seen before. So where's the
Yeah,
competition?
man. That that was well said. And it touches on another one of my favorite quotes that's about science, because we really look at science as like, oh, everything can be answered by science. And there's a lot of mindsets, I think, today that like, oh, science is a fairy godmother, it'll eventually save us. But there's this weird interface between just this void of reality and our science, where science is based on hypotheses, but there's nothing in science that creates a hypothesis. Like a human has to come up with that. It's a leap of faith, or a doorway into imagination, and then it becomes science, then it becomes a theory, then it becomes tested. And in the same way, like I was just thinking about AI, and you're right, like it's just like churning through the muck of what's already been done. And that's not to say that it won't permutate and like do other things, but there's always that potential in the human spirit to take that next step and create the next thing that, yeah, gets thrown on the pile of synthesis. And I really like that, because I know in my own art, like, yeah, I'm trying to repeat those hits that were just really satisfying, but I'm also like going to bed at night and dreaming of these like entirely new things I've never tried before. And that kind of seems like the actual doorway of the artistic spirit.
Yeah, man, fuck your
Um,
past. Like,
yeah.
you know, that's great. It's great. Your style that you, the things that you've made are awesome. But keep going, you know,
Yeah,
and like art in general is a conversation through time and place and history and humans and now AI. And like, you know, why not rip off AI the same way that it, you know, in the same way that if I'm having a conversation with you and you say something that I like the sound of, I'm going to say it again. You know, I'm going to try it on my, in like a different context. So like, I feel like a lot of artists are overly attached and
mm,
like possessive of of their whatever, their art, their style, their ideas, acting like they didn't borrow any parts from anybody. Like they are like fully original. Like, come on. We're all like borrowing from each other all the fucking time. We're all organically connected.
totally, man. And when I talk about how you've been like really just influential in my kind
Feel
of
free to
coming
rip
back.
me off, you guys. Anything you want.
Yeah. You
Take
heard it
it.
here. You heard it here, folks.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, one of the things that just so stands out is when you were here and I was just showing you like this old folder I had of these drawings that to me are just like so special. They're from like 15 years ago, and they're like half finished. And I love, you were just like, I mean, it was nice to impress you. That was a good ego boost. But at the same time, the part that stands out to me is you looked at it and I'm like, yeah, I started this, but it's not done. And you're like, that's done. I was like, no, like the whole top half I haven't done yet. You're like, no, it's done. Move on. And I was like, fuck, he's right. Like these pieces are done. Like, and yeah, that's just such a different mentality than that kind of clinging that you were sort of describing, where we can get so wrapped up in our identities and our worth being in this like perfected, and it could be anything. It could be art, it could be music, it could be relationship, it could be anything. And when you're able to just like, yep, that was a time and place, and I'm on to the next thing, and I'm dancing with it, that was like a huge liberating moment for me, that I didn't have to be stuck to those pieces that were unfinished. They were done. And anything is done the moment that you say it is, which
Yeah.
is when that experimentation stops.
Yeah.
So, hey, I want
Unless you want to
to
get into and make new art with it or whatever. I mean, whatever. You could go
yeah,
back and do things, but like to have some sort of like reservation about it, being like it's not, and that's not your drawing is enough. Your line drawing is enough. Your painting that you put 10,000 hours into is enough. That also would have been enough at 10 hours. And like, but to, yeah, but to like have an attachment to some like outcome that like, you know, tomorrow I'll feel better. If this thing's done, if this, then I'll feel complete. That's a fallacy. That's a myth.
totally. And it's empowering to realize that we have the power to decide when something's done.
Yeah.
Like it's a switch in your head and it's yours. Like no one can tell you, I don't know, like you're not trying to impress anyone at that point. It's just you have the power to say like, yep, that's done. I'm moving on. Let it go.
Yeah. And
Go
that was
flow.
like the genius of Bob Ross.
Hmm.
You know, this is your world. You make a mistake, turn it into a tree. You don't like it, turn it into a bird. Like whatever. This is your world and blah blah blah. Like Bob Ross had some shit right. He's he's awesome. Everybody should watch the documentary. It's powerful.
Are you a neo-Rossist? I knew
I
it.
mean, I'm not. No.
I see that fro starting
Oh
underneath the
yeah, man.
belly.
I've been Bob Ross for Halloween and it was glorious.
Well, hey, I wanna take one little pivot because in our front nine, I was kind of looking for the places where I saw like a spark in your eye or a fire. And there's a couple places when you're up on your soapbox that I felt it. And I didn't want to trod the back nine without at least, pulling on some of those threads. And the one that I want to talk about is uh just your view of the world today. And again, the light and shadow, like art is an interplay of light and shadow. Life is an interplay of light and shadow. And I think you and I, well, I don't know. I feel like in at least what you say, it tends towards the light. And then it was interesting to hear you talking about Ukraine and Ethiopia and like just the monstrosity of humans. And yeah, to hear you very passionately painting, kind of a different picture. And so, art being this tool for communication, um, I would like to just hear a little bit more about how you see the state of things, what's happening in the world and what you think the world needs.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, and it's funny we took that time in between the podcasts and in between the recording times and uh it's funny I felt like very vulnerable. Like I thought about maybe editing some of it and I'm like no. No, I never
Fuck
do
no.
that. Not doing that. And like I just I don't know if it's like embarrassment of just like taking my heart out and setting it on the table for everybody to listen to and see and or what but like and that's art like as the artist if you're going to show people your art like you're like making your self your whatever you're like opening yourself up to the slings and arrows of judgment and ideas and thought, whatever. And yeah, so it was wild how like that all just happened. And then afterwards I was like, holy shit. Like that really went there, didn't it? And I threw it all out there. And yeah, but that's what art is. And it's good for me to do that because I've been throughout my time, I've always been aware of what the art that I make says or how people could read it. So I've been sort of guarded in that way. Because I know art can be psychoanalyzed. Even as a little kid, I knew that art could be psychoanalyzed. So I never wanted to do anything that made it possible to psychoanalyze me. So I sort of like would stay on the surface with things. And this podcast has actually been a really great way for me to like push more and like make my, lean into that vulnerability of art making, which is like I think that's what you have to do if you really want people to connect, if you want your art to really be powerful. But yeah, I was, I have been very optimistic for like most of my life and just kind of like thinking that everything's all good. And in recent years, I don't know, I've written like the last like 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I've really dove in. I guess I've never shied away from learning about the state of the world, and I've been really blessed to been able to travel a lot and see other places and experience things and be aware of other countries and people and things. And yeah, I've been, I guess I feel now like not as optimistic. And I feel like things are really fucked up in a lot of ways and places. I also believe in the ingenuity of humans and the power of connection and the soul and healing. I know that people can heal, but there's also so many like structures in the world that are so calcified that like take the human element out. And like if you can't connect with humans in these giant structures, then they can just like crush organic reality as we know it, and the planet and the world. And like um yeah, the loss of biodiversity in the last 150 years is fucking insane. Like the amount of species that have gone extinct is nuts. Maybe we'll be able to stop it, but there's zero evidence that we as a human race are capable of it, let alone like trying to do it. There's a lot of people that are trying to do it, but like the overall majority aren't necessarily doing that. And yeah, there's like there's this funny paradox of humanity where like we're all individuals and we all might want, the rainforests to stay what they are. We might want CO2 emissions to be cut in half and or like way majorly curbed. We might not want all these things that are good, but then we're all part of this giant system, and humanity's like the mass of everybody is moving in directions that we can't control. So like you as an individual, you could, live completely off grid, sustainably, all these different things, be going in the right way. You can write books about it, you can do all these things, but like compared to the like 7 billion that aren't doing anything about it, aren't able to do anything about it. I mean, so many people are just trying to like feed their families and keep their house warm. So they go out and they chop down trees to do that, to feed their families, to keep their kids alive. But it's like causing deforestation in Africa. Fuck. What do we do? Like people have needs. And so, like what do we do about the homeless problem? That Kisa Johnson on her podcast, we talked about like the wicked problems. Wicked problems are these like problems that are fucking huge and they're super
Mm.
dynamic. And like, what do we do? Like somebody's got to do something. If nobody does anything, then it's like we're in like a freight train going off a cliff. So we all have to do something, but nobody can really do like, everyone who's trying in their different ways, they're running into the structures that are, and they're being, challenged by that. Like corporate greed is a major problem, and it's like causing a lot of, I'm still optimistic that maybe, corporations that have fucked so much shit up through like pollution and like all these different things, maybe those corporations are going to have the realization that if everything's all fucked up and unstable, it's not going to be good for business. So then it's in their best interest to save the world. I think like that would be a sweet little ironic twist that,
No humans, no people to buy shit.
right. If the whole world is thrown off balance, then it's all fucked up. I heard a really cool podcast the other day on the Daily that I think it's the Prime Minister or someone from Barbados is working with an economics this like badass in economics who like spent their time in England and like anyway, they came up with this idea. Okay, so in like the Caribbean, storms are getting bigger and they're more often every year. So these little tiny countries are getting destroyed, and then they have to take out loans from the World Bank to fix shit. But there's like these stipulations in all the loans because the loan structure was created in like 1945 after World War II. So the loan structure is kind of set up. It's not set up for what's going on right now. So those countries have to decide between paying the loans back or helping their citizens of their country. And so and they're poor countries anyway. They don't have a big GDP, so they're not generating a lot of revenue, income, all the things. So, and I'm not an economist here, by the way. But um so they're just like getting battered by these, or by these big storms, and then they have to take loans, but then they get buried by the loans, and then they're just like fucked. And so what do they even do? And no big countries want to listen, even though the big countries are the ones that have created the situation.
Mm.
We, the United States, have created a huge amount of the CO2 in the fucking air, like everything. Um, so, and no one's going to listen to Barbados. If you take all the Caribbean and add up all the numbers, it's less than 1% of the world population. So no one's going to listen to that, and they don't want to give a handout. So these people came up with this idea to instead join together in like a coalition, everybody from like the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn. And that, if you take that band worldwide, because these are the people that are going to be most fucked up by climate change. If you take that number, that's like 3.5 billion people, which is like 40% of the world. And so they're talking about doing different loan structures and banding together and like trying to force, changes. And it's so like, it's awesome. I think it's
Mm.
really cool how they're thinking differently. And I don't know where I was going with that, but at least, like it is promise. There are these like glimmers of hope, and there is promise, but at the same time, like shit looks bad.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing these things, because it does strike me that these are the thoughts that we have at night when we're alone and safe in our covers, and then we go out in the world and we, in a way, project the the way that we want to be, and we have the days that we want to have. And I don't know, it's comforting to hear that you're you're also just in this place where the awareness is there of this kind of full uh spotlight, or I'm sorry, floodlight kind of view of what's going on. But as a person, your focus is on the relationships that you have to nurture, your self-love, the things that you have direct impact over. And you were talking, the thing that actually what you said to begin with was like, humans need a consciousness change. And I feel like in your life, you've had a consciousness change. Maybe describe, what that means to you. What is that consciousness change?
Yeah. Um, I feel like it's like it boils down to compassion for uh, others, and like which boils down deeper to the fact that I feel like I see the same, I don't know, the same consciousness, the same energy, the same soul, the same like the same experience of reality in all of us. And not just us, but not just humans, but animals too. Um, they used to think that like animals don't have a soul, and they don't think, but like Nova definitely has like an experience of life. She has emotions, she has feelings, and like down to, you look like a bug crawling around. Like they're making decisions, and they're like trying to survive. And yeah, their brain wiring is like way minimized, way simplified, and ours is way more complex. Um, but like if anyone who's ever spent like decent amounts of time around an animal of any kind, like that like they have desires, they have wants, they have feelings, they want to, feel good, they don't want to feel pain. And and I mean, part of it I think is, maybe a lot of these realizations I've like felt deeply have come from some drug experiences that I've had, where I've like felt deep down like compassion flooding through me, and like I've held gazes in people's eyes that are like soul connection. Like I see like you and you see me, and it's like way deeper than you can even explain. And yeah, I don't know. It sucks because I feel like by saying that and like connecting it to doing drugs, it sort of like puts somebody in the same, like in the boat of like, oh, you're just like a hippie who's like, of course, like all are one, and it's all love and whatnot. But um, that message has been loud and fucking clear to me, and I've felt it like deep down, like through and through. And when I see somebody on the street, whether it's no, it doesn't matter, homeless person, like well-to-do, this and that, man, woman, in between, whatever the fuck, like everybody's just doing the best that they can, and they've all had formative experiences, and they're just trying to get through the day, and they're putting their pants on one leg at a time. And we experience birth and life and death, and we have family or people or things that we care about and want to be good and happy. And like, you know we look at Vladimir Putin. you know he's just the same. He's just fucked up. And like the whole thing, like hurt people. Yeah, he's fucking damaged. And so are tons of people who are really wreaking havoc on this planet and other people. And like we need, like, the answer is not more war and more killing, like more fighting, more everything, because that just creates, these long standing like hatreds, these deep down hatreds. Like we need to transmute negative energy into something that's at least neutral. And then from neutral, you can go into positive. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of your midtones, right? Like where are the midtones?
Yeah. Let's bring it back to the midtones. Because obviously this isn't working, and we're just like, I mean, the ridiculousness of this fucking war to me is like, okay, what's Putin gonna win? Great. He gets Ukraine. and he's murdered and raped and pillaged like how many millions of people? Sweet. Okay. Well, the planet's still fucked up. We're still losing biodiversity. We're still like everything's like going in a negative direction. And now you just hate everybody and everybody hates you. Sweet. What did you fucking win? Like, no. It's fucking stupid and it pisses me off. And yeah. But again, I like that's my soapbox. I don't want to like
Yeah, no,
act like
man.
I
I
know
think,
anything about anything. I'm just a guy who is like experiencing life and whatever. So
yeah, but I think it's important that we just like acknowledge that we live against a backdrop that is outside of our control. And you could throw a dart at any point in the timeline of human history, and there's always been the pillaging, rapist, murderous bastards, and there's always been the human-hearted, you know, equal. I don't know, like there's this interplay of the dark and the light, even in human history. And I go to sleep some nights and I'm just like, I'm there and I'm just like making these like sighs and grunts. And Kayla's like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm thinking about this like crazy thing, whatever." And then I get up and I just like live my day. And so I think that there is, in the same way that we've been talking about, art and life, and there's so much about the wisdom that you have in art that you've imparted on me about kind of letting go and seeing things not as a like a hyper personal connection, but as a, I don't know, an experience that is transient. And at the end of the first half, we did talk about our friend Adam, and so we know that all of this, all of the frustration, all the joy, all the sorrow, all of these things, like the piece will be done at some point for each of us. And at that point, like it's just done. Like whatever was in it, whatever mistakes, whatever, you don't get to go back and correct them. And I don't know, for me, this is something that I've been kind of grappling with, because I also have this like highly optimistic spirit that we are all of the earth. We are doing what the earth does. Yet there's so much pain, there's so much suffering, and it feels highly personal, and it's hard to see the injustice, the just the absolute atrocities happening and not feel personally connected to it. Yet when brush meets canvas, when shoes meet street, like we're each gifted this experience with the people around us. And you can paint all in the dark tones and just see that and be depressed and then fucking kill yourself, and a lot of people do, or make things worse, and you're just painting with black ink over black ink over black ink. And I'm hopeful that there's enough creatives and human-hearted people and people who have had drug experiences and have had that feeling of unity and oneness, where you see that there's not a speck of dust that's out of place in the universe, and can go out and create art. And hopefully is, we've gone really far into the shadows, I think, in the last 100 years, but it's always been this interplay of dark and light. And I don't know. Again, I say this because it's what I want to convince myself of most deeply. Like I'm aware of that. Um, but it is just a fun, I don't know if it's fun, but it is a place that I recognize that as a human-hearted person, there's this question of how much do you try and control and how much do you let go of. And so, yeah, it's enjoyable to have a conversation like this with someone like you, who has both the awareness of that, big focus, and also that spotlight focus of where you're creating the types of experiences that the world that brightens the world. So not sure how to land this plane, but I'll say that, coming out to California and just seeing you and like the humans that you've collected, those relationships and the people that you've had on the podcast, the story that you're telling, like you are painting some highlights over a lot of shit. And I guess that's kind of the beauty of life, is that there are enough different people to round out the composition, that when it's all said and done, like May not be perfect, may not be what we wanted or hoped for, but it's at least in some sort of balance.
Beautiful, beautiful, Ryan. You just made a masterpiece with words. Well done.
It's the whiskey. This episode brought to you by Stranahan's Blue Peak Single Malt Whiskey. Available only in Colorado, so come hang out.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think that was great. Maybe instead of like thinking of it as like a plane landing, we can just sort of be a helicopter and like come
Yeah.
back down to earth. And one thing that just popped into my head was getting back to the bright side of things. The previous episode that I released before this one was with your sweet little daughter, Hadley.
You haven't released it yet, though, have you?
No,
Yeah.
not at the point of this recording,
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm going to record or I'm going to release it in the next couple of days. And then this one that we're doing will be released like a week later. And dude, that was fun. That was so much fun.
I'm so glad that you got to have that experience, and I can't wait to hear what was said because we just like gave her the microphone and we like left her alone. So
Dude, talk about flow state. She was just like, it was so funny because she was like kind of buttoned up for a little bit, trying to be like, answer the questions right. And then after a little while, I think she got kind of bored and then got goofy. And then she was just like, it was like doing an interview with a butterfly. Like, it was so awesome. And she'd be talking about one thing and then like bounce across the room to the other side and be like, oh, and then this, and then like, and it was just like, it was so perfect. It was exactly what it should have been.
that's awesome. And yeah, like, I like that segue because having children, it shows you so clearly how cyclical the human experience is. And it's amazing to me that children can be born into affluence in a penthouse or on a trash heap. And there's something about the human spirit that will just show up and fucking throw down and just play. And even when there's structure, even when there's oppression, even when there's all of these things, like the next generation like starts over with that playfulness and that like imagination. And when I see Hadley, like, yeah, she's just here to express whatever it is that is beyond our ability to define it. And I know over time, like, more is going to be put on her and she's going to kind of find her way into adulthood. But like, that's that renewing process that humans have always had, that have endured the fall of Rome, that have endured ice ages and famines and plagues and all of this shit. And like each generation bounces back with this just artistic fire.
Right.
And I don't know, it's hopeful.
It is hopeful. And that's like where we can really like feel that optimism that like it's a continually renewing energy source of like the human spirit. Kids are not born racist. Kids are not born like any kind of phobic, any kind of anything. Like they just are. And so like we can, you know, as like these as I don't know, if like negative elements in humanity can just die off and not be renewed, and we like then the youth and like kids will be coming in, and like there's just that innocence, that purity, like so yeah, that's kids are like definitely an optimistic bright
Mm.
spot to everything.
It reminds me of again, there's so many things that I like quote that I don't actually have direct knowledge of, but like I heard something about it and then it was meaningful to me. So there's this thing from Nietzsche that I haven't read, but I think it's called the transformation of the spirit. And it talks about how as we grow, we kind of move through these different animals. And when you're young, you're like a camel, and it's about like shouldering this load. And society is like putting all of these expectations on you, and you kind of like grow strong under that load. And the heavier the load, the more stronger the lion that you eventually transform into. And then that lion goes out, and its job is to like kill this dragon. And that dragon, on every scale of the dragon, is a thou shalt. And it's like the whole structure of society that's telling you like who you are, who you're supposed to be, like what the system is, like that conformity principle. And the lion goes out and kills the dragon eventually, and then in a way like becomes that next dragon, becomes that next system. But there's always, the camels coming up, and there's the dragons. And so I don't know, I see, as we talk about, in Colorado here, we just passed a bunch of legislation about psychedelics and access for adults. And, I have friends that are actually taking trainings in psychedelic therapy. And it's not a silver bullet by any stretch, but it feels like the kind of cycling of humans is that there becomes these rigid structures, those dragons, those thou shalts. And it's like a time of energy. And the United States kicked ass for 50, 60 years and created all of this, I don't know, new patterns and form. But eventually it becomes stale and stagnant, and it has to be kind of rebelled against in a way. And so there's like that, in the 60s there was a whole revolution that kind of happened. And then I feel like today there's another type of revolution that's happening in the minds of more and more people. And it's messy, and it's dynamic, and it's it's really unstructured. And those will eventually create the next structures. But it seems kind of built into the human happening that, it's not a coincidence that all of these substances and experiences are kind of showing up right when those old structures are really threatening our existence.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And that's when like a lot of plants show up. Like Haley's an herbalist. I've learned a lot about
Mm.
herbalism and plants and things. And like there are all these plants that will grow when the soil is polluted. Mushrooms will grow when there's like an oil spill, and they will transmute that oil and then the mess, and then like process it. They process like decay and then like bring it back to becoming good again. It's like a process of renewal and health. And yeah, like that is definitely, when you zoom out and you look at it metaphorically, like this whole shit is fucked up, and there's a lot of things are decaying and need to be renewed in a new, fresh way.
Yeah, one of my favorite movies is I Heart Huckabees.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a great
Right.
line there where he says, "No manure, no magic." And it's so funny that magic mushrooms grow on cow shit.
Right.
And in a way, like I think Kayla and I were having this conversation that like in a way, like, yeah, things are so fucked up, but there's so much beauty that is like blossoming from that shit pile.
Yep.
And if we can see ourselves as these little mushrooms, like we can't deny the shit. You can't pretend it's not there. You can't just like bury your head in the sand, but you can just like take that energy, take that anger, take that passion, and turn it into color, turn it into connection and conversation. And that's like, we're all just these little magic mushrooms on top of a huge pile of shit. That's the way it's always been.
I like that. You might be a mushroom, folks. Well,
Oh
I
man, I
think
just
we
want to
should probably
say,
call it on that.
yeah, I was gonna say congratulations on 100 episodes. It is an amazing expression of your creative spirit, and I'm honored to be here and share this moment with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. And yeah, thanks for being here with me. you're on quite the journey yourself, and it's really awesome to watch. And I feel honored to be a part of it. And fuck, man, I'm excited to see where everything goes in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10. Like, just keep going, and that's how things organically grow into amazing things.
Well said, brother. All right. Well, let you get back to your night, but this has been the season finale of the Art and Life podcast with your guest host, Ryan Stover, and our very special guest, Taylor Gallegos. And all of you keep making your magic.
Hell yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.